All right, here we are, the final aspect of the course, 200 points, 4 grade levels attached to these tasks. This is what the other tasks have been building you towards. So we've been practicing doing interpreting, so you get used to the idea of doing interpreting work. You've done a musical series of music pieces so that you get to choose the music that you want to work with, put your own creativity into it. You've got time to think about it. It's really more of a translation task, so it's not technically consecutive interpreting, where these will be. And Shakespeare also is a translation task. It's not exactly translation because you're doing a summary. So you're constructing your version of this story, and but you also get to choose to some extent which story. It has to be Shakespeare, but other than that, you still have some power to choose. And then these come at you. You got 4 different tasks. You don't get to choose what they are, and they come at the end, so you can't do these ahead of time until they're open and available. And these will close because I don't want you trying to do them all without feedback in between them. You're supposed to do a task, do the next analysis. You during a SWOT, and I'll generate a score and give you feedback, but you also need to review your work to see what you're doing and have a more of a detailed path of your plan of how to improve. You don't actually have to implement it, but you have to think about this stuff, because at some point you're going to be finished taking classes with us, and you need to be able to analyze your own work, come up with a plan for how you get better without us being the ones telling you what to do. Once you get used to doing that now, so that I have the slightest bit of hope that once you graduate, you'll get better after graduation and not be frozen at that level at the point you graduate, because that happens to too many people and I'm tired of it. So keep getting better. We're never done getting better. All right, so consecutive interpreting, what does that mean? That means that these videos have a segment of somebody talking. This will be English to ASL, right? So they're talking, and then they stop talking, and the screen freezes and changes to black and white. And after a few moments, there's a countdown clock that counts you down to 0, and then they start talking again. And then they freeze. And you've got another countdown clock eventually comes, and then they start talking again. So if they talk for 10 seconds, you get 10 seconds to get your piece out in ASL. If they talk for 12 seconds, you got 12 seconds to put your piece out. If they talk for 30 seconds, don't panic. It is going to stop, but now you've got 30 seconds to get all of that information out that they put out in the first language. So you don't have time to take notes. You don't have time to think and prepare other than, okay, I'm going to do the first, right? What am I doing? What is interpreting? What are you always doing? Something in, something out, with something done in the middle, right? Why do we do consecutive interpreting? So that we don't do all of these at the same time until right before the internship, because that's what we're expected to do. We're expected to do all of them at the same time, but we don't have to if we can carefully control our circumstances. And you can. Generally, you can, although not always. And probably the least controllable situation is an educational classroom where it's only one deaf person, and to make the whole thing a consecutive experience would be kind of punishing all the hearing people in the room for being hearing. But it would be a better output for the deaf person if you did it. So a doctor's interview, or doing a deposition with an attorney, or having a conversation about opening up a bank account or getting insurance, or whatever it is that's a conversation. Usually conversations, people are willing to take turns. And when they're willing to take turns, if you ask them to just a moment, hold that thought for just a minute, they generally are cooperative and will do so. And they're particularly cooperative on video phones, or on video interpreting calls when they can't see you, and you say, hold just a moment, please. Oh, they will hold for an hour as long as they know you're still there. Yes, if you want to work consecutive on video relay interpreting, more power to you. It's very easy to do. You just ask one side or the other to hold on a second, and then you can just, keep asking what you got. Finally you figured out what the deaf person said, and then you can say it one time, right? So something in is what you're going to do for the first part. They're talking English, and you're taking it in. But you should also start doing some of the magic, right? Figuring out, okay, I need to do something with this, So part of it is I need to remember it, right? There's a challenge. And then the other part of it is, okay, and which part goes first, and how do I open in ASL, and what word structure should I use, and what vocabulary should I use to talk about these concepts? Do I need to teach the concept, or we're just going to explain the concept as though you already know it? Those are decisions that are fair game to make. And then the countdown clock side of it goes, and right, and so you were doing this when they were talking, and now they're done talking, and you're still probably doing some processing, but you got to get the target text out. That's why we practice consecutive work, and that's why consecutive work generally is a better product, because you're able to put more brain power to one side of the equation or the other, rather than dispersing it across everything all at the same time, right? So in theory, you've got half of your brain power doing listening, and half the brain power processing it and figuring out how am I going to deal with this. And then the circumstances change, and you're still doing that processing thing, but only half of the brain activity has to concentrate on, so did I generate that message grammatically correctly in the target language, right? So it's 50% and 50%, not 33, 33, and 33%, which is what simultaneous interpreting is expecting you to do. The reality of simultaneous is probably you're giving 50% or more on any given task, and you're just quickly changing between them. That's what we think is going on when you're doing simultaneous work. Well, okay, so let's just have circumstances that are better. Why am I telling you this? Because I want you to have patience to do this. A lot of people just say, oh, it's just easier for me to do simultaneous interpreting. What you mean is that you don't have to remember it, that you don't have to think about it as much. That's what you mean. That's what easier feels like. If you look at the end result, your chances are strong that your message is rather way more convoluted in a simultaneous task, because you were busy putting vocabulary to words you just heard. Well, what does it mean? What's the point of it? I don't know. I'm just giving you access. Well, we want to go beyond access. We want to start at meaning if we can help it, and we want to get to function as much of the time as we can. That means I need to know what they're trying to do with the message. I'm trying to convince you. I'm trying to entertain you, right? How do I convince you in ASL? How do I entertain you in ASL? What do deaf entertainers look like? What do deaf teachers look like? What do deaf pastors look like? I should be looking like those communicators, doing the things that those communicators do, if that's the function of the message, right? Okay, so this is all review. I hope this is all review for why are we doing what we're doing. So let's get back to this. So how do I get my points, right? Well, you generate an interpretation of the text. I will probably identify a stopping point. I give you access to the entire text because it's worth you being able to practice all of it from the beginning to its conclusion. But that's a long process, and it gives us both way more data than we have time to look at in a class session. But it can be useful for you to revisit these things later. So I don't pre-edit the videos to a shorter piece. Basically, I'll tell you, go 10 minutes in, and when you hear or see this piece of the message, that's when you'll interpret that piece, and then you're done. So remember, you're not supposed to do simultaneous processing. You listen, 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 keep your hands down to your sides preferably, and not crossed or in front of you, because you have to spend muscle energy to hold this posture, and it's not useful energy. Plus, when you put your arms to your sides, that allows you to breathe in and take a deep, deliberate breath, and your brain needs oxygen to do this stuff. And that's one of the things that researchers found, is that people who were struggling and hurting themselves when they were interpreting, because they were busier than they needed to be, and they were doing more movements than they needed to be, and there'll be a separate video to explain these things later. Anyway, one of the things they found was that they were doing shallow breaths through the entire process. And shallow breathing, it's like, okay, so you're just barely getting enough oxygen to survive here. You're not thriving, and one way to help you inhale more deeply and not feel restricted is to not already be restricted in your posture. So be like those models on the billboards, and don't close yourself off, but be open, right? And then that actually can have an impact on your mind and your ability to be open to succeeding in the task. So arms to the sides while you're waiting, and listening and thinking and processing and getting ready to interpret. They stop talking, that goes to black and white, bring your hands up, and you should have a plan for your first sentence before you generate the first sign. That's the goal. It's rarely that well thought out that I know exactly what the sentence is going to be. You should have a pretty good ballpark idea of I know what I'm going to start off with. And when I'm done there, right, I'm going to start over here and get over here, and then when I'm done there, I need to revisit this space. I need to start here and come back. How am I going to organize my message? What am I trying to get people to do? I'm trying to convince them, sell them something, entertain them, apologize for something. What's the function of this text? And so when I'm done, make sure that that gets conveyed as well as what did they say, right? What did they do? They apologized. How did they do it? What did they say? Okay, all of that is fair game for getting done. You need to be appropriately dressed on your video. So you're going to video record yourself. Posture for good breath, and let's say that it's 10 seconds, and I see you just not doing anything for 10 seconds. And then I see you doing something for about 10 seconds. And then I see you not doing anything for, 15 seconds. And I see you doing something for about 15 seconds. If you end up needing a little extra time, please finish your thought, even though they started talking. You don't have to put your hands down as soon as they started talking. But I don't want you to be simultaneously interpreting. I don't want you to interpret that segment while they're talking. I want you to only be interpreting the previous segment if you're overlapping with somebody's talking. You have the ability in doing this to fix things. So it is possible that they said something, they gave you 2 points, and you got one of them expressed in the time that you had. And you couldn't remember what the other point was because you had more than enough time to do it, even though you don't believe you did. And then the next segment comes up, and you're reminded, oh yeah, that's what the other point was. You may put the other point at the beginning of your message, but you have to wait until they stop talking. And then you can try to jam in the other 3 points that they just added to that 1 point, right? And so you need to focus on, I'm processing at this point, I'm producing at this point. Back to processing, back to producing, not doing everything at the same time. If you do these tasks as simultaneous interpretations, I'm going to cut your points, and I'm tempted to give you 0, but we'll see if I don't want to punish you if that's the only way you're able to do it, but that's not the point of these assignments. The point of these assignments is that you show me that you can remember what a message is outside of the time that it's being spoken, and that you can correctly process this information into useful and clear, organized ASL. Because when we're doing simultaneous work, we kind of forget how to do all that stuff. So prove to me that you're capable of it now, and that you will remember that you're capable of it later when you realize, okay, this is a circumstance that consecutive work would probably be good at. It would be good for me to use. Right. So just when you thought we're done, I got one more thing I need to throw into this. And that is, okay, so you're going to submit your video. I'm going to look at a portion of it. I won't tell you ahead of time what portion I'm going to look at. I'm not going to look at all of it. I don't have time to look at all of it. But they're usually key parts that I'm used to looking at, and I can gain some quick insight as to how you're processing and how you're generating your target text, and give you guidance to get better. Great. So I do that part. What do? You need to then revisit any other part of the text. And when I say that, you can do a very deep dive here and pick 1 minute of something that you did. But you need to transcribe the source text and the target text. So here's a little sample. Right? So the source text at 2 minutes and 35 seconds, this is a fictional text. I don't actually have a video to show you. So somebody speaking says, "The sun is the primary source of all global warming. Without the sun, our planet would freeze in less than 1 day," which is rather true. If you're worried about global warming, we can fix that. Just get rid of the sun. Okay. Now, of course, that's probably not a realistic solution. How did you put your ASL out? And this would be your target text. So at 2 minutes and 43 seconds into your video recording, then you generated the following target text, and you would gloss it out in a way that makes sense. So at this point I'm thinking, idea, quote, global warming requires sunshine, suppose no sun. then earth. Freeze quick, one day, fish. Right? Okay. So I have identified the source text, I have identified the target text, right? Remember, those are the things that we can actually identify. That's my hope. I can look at, engage, measure, quantify what they said and what I did. And this is where the mysterious magic happens, and I have to be thinking about it. And that's the purpose of the SWOT analysis. All of this stuff is for purposes, everybody, okay? I'm not just trying to waste your time. I'm trying to get you to be able to do things effectively so that you can get better, right? Interpreting is impossible, so get better. That's what Marina McIntyre taught us back in the 90s. So I want you to identify things that you did well. I do not want you to tear yourself apart. I want you to find things that you need to improve on and find ways to do the improving. But I don't want that to be the sole focus of this, because I have gone through training that was the goal. You tear yourself down to the bare bones, and then you just question your worth as a human being and why are you in this profession anyway. I was already a certified interpreter when I took that training, and it was devastating. I don't know how, had to devastate my peers that weren't certified interpreters yet. And I don't want that to happen. That is not what this is about. This is SWOT analysis, and I have a little booklet that's you can find the booklet in the canvas here, and so you'll have examples on what to do. But my quick little review is identify some strengths. What did you do right? Well, in this particular example, I moved the topic near the beginning of the first sentence. So, right, global warming appears at the end of the first sentence here, and I've got it as the third and fourth elements of this sentence in ASL, and the sun ends up being moved to the final position. Okay, great. I'm seeing that as a strength. I'm identifying that that's a better ASL structure, therefore it's a good thing. I spelled out all of the letters in the right order, and they were visually clear. Well, there you go. That's something done well. Give yourself credit for it. I converted a conditional into a more obvious if-then structure, right? Without the sun, our planet would freeze in less than a day. If there's no sun, then our planet would freeze in less than 1 day. So I've emphasized and clarified that in my ASL version. Great. There's 3 strengths. There art thou happy, right? I have managed to do some positive things. Now, are there things that I could improve on? Sure. And then I get down here into the next piece. So here's the source text. Sorry, here's the... oh, this is a different language. So if I were going the other way, which we're not in this class, and I had ASL as a source text, I transcribe that, and then I transcribe what I say, and then I analyze that little piece. And I can have multiple strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that could occur in any given segment, right? I don't have to have one segment per, per result. So, strength, I expanded NAD to say the full name, the National Association of the Deaf. I had expanded RAD to be the full name Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. That was a good thing, because my hearing audience doesn't know what NAD or RAD is. And then I have an opportunity. I did not include the time information other than the basic meaning of past tense. I might have left out the long ago piece, right? And so that was an opportunity. What is an opportunity? That is something that at the time I was not aware that I had failed to do something, and now that I've looked at it, oops, yeah, there was but I could have done a better job. And we want to see a potential target text, which I don't have an example of here. That, okay, so what would it look like if I did do the better job with the opportunity? I should probably have, so give me a cleaned up version of this. Now that I've thought about it, I would have said this, right? So you have, what did the source text say? What did my target text say? And then PTT, potential target text, what would I have said now that I know better? Strengths and opportunities, great. Strength means, at the time, I knew I was doing a good job, and I was right. Weakness, at the time, I knew that I was not doing a good job, but probably I was right. So the weaknesses are interesting. It's like, I know that I missed that piece. So what did you do about it? Well, I can't ask them to repeat, because it's a videotape. I can't interrupt it and have it go back. I mean, yeah, you could manipulate it and make it go back, but you're not supposed to. Don't do that. So, I missed it and I couldn't remember what it was. So that was a weakness. I knew that I missed it at the time, and I was right. I missed it. If I didn't know that I missed it at the time, here's an opportunity. It might end up still being the same idea. If you missed it, you missed it. What would you do? Now that I've thought about it, here's my potential target text. I would have done this because now I know what they said. I had an opportunity. At the time, I didn't know I missed it at all, right? A weakness is I knew I was messing up at the time, and whatever I did is what I did, which, wasn't what I wanted to do, but that's what I did. What would you want to do? Show me. Opportunity. I didn't know at the time that I was messing up, but now that I've noticed it, here's what I would do. So very similar to a weakness. On the opposite polar end of the strength is a threat. At the time, I didn't know what to do, and I still don't. And it's my intention that you figure out and convert all the threats into opportunities. Okay, I finally figured out here's the path that I could choose that would solve the problem. Great. If you generate a SWOT analysis and you still have threats in there, that means that you still don't know the answer and you want my contribution to try to guide you towards, well, what could you have done with it? And so that's usually what I focus my attention on when I'm reviewing your SWOT analysis. Did you do it? Great. And how many points is it worth? Well, isn't that magical how the point system works? So you got so many points for doing the task. Let's say you got a 40 out of 50. There's your 40 points. Great. But I wanted 50. Sure you did. Do a good SWOT analysis that has everything that I'm looking for. You put the transcriptions, you analyzed what was going on, you had your potential target text, and you had a summary at the end that reviewed all of the patterns that you had here. Right? I didn't cover that, but it's right here. Right? At the end, you have looked at everything and figured out, aha, out of the 20 items that I've identified, because I'm looking for you to have 20 items at a minimum, right? Here's 3, strength, strength, and opportunity, right? There would be 3. You need 17 more, right? So maybe I only have to analyze 5 or 8 segments to pull 20 items, 20 strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? Great. So then I look at all of those things. Okay, well, I have 8 strengths, and so I have a good pattern of clear finger spelling and whatever it is that you notice as your strengths. Maybe they all fit in the same kind of category. And I have a pattern of missing technical vocabulary that I don't know how to spell, which is not a mysterious thing, right? If you don't know how to spell it, well, you're going to miss something, right? You're not sure how to spell it. You might miss. So what's the strategy here? Did you reveal that there's a missing piece? Did you give me part of the missing piece? Did you accidentally spell it right, and it actually wasn't a problem when you were done? It was a unforeseen strength. Okay, so you just talk about your work and what's your plan. Now that you've seen this pattern, I tend to do this. The solution tends to be something as simple as if I would just wait another 10 seconds, I could get this message out more cleanly. Okay, well, in the SWOT and in a consecutive task, that's probably not going to be the answer too often. In simultaneous work, it absolutely will be. What's the pattern, and is there a solution that would have worked for you? Okay, is that something you can practice before the next assessment? Is it something you can concentrate on during the next assessment? Can you put that into action and see whether you have better results the next time? I want you to chain these analyses across all 4 texts. I want you to identify in SWOT 2, previous assessment, identified these things to work on. This is what I actually did. I'm hoping you actually did something. Maybe you only did it one time and you gave 15 minutes to it, but if you did, let me know. And this time I noticed that these are the patterns, and maybe it's a different pattern, it's a different text. Am I seeing now something else is coming to the forefront? Great, let's focus on that for a week or 2. And then something else will come to the forefront, and I focus on that for a week or 2. And I just keep focusing on the primary thing that I'm at right now, and I make that better. And maybe I make it better enough that it doesn't rise to the top the next time around. Or maybe I can't make it better quickly enough, and it's the same thing every assessment. All 4 assessments identified the same pattern. Well, did you get any better at it across the 4 assessments? Did you try to do anything about it, or did you just notice it's the same problem and it's always going to be a problem because you never had time to fix it? Part of the idea is to identify the problem. Part of the idea is to have a plan to fix it. And part of the idea, in ideal circumstances, is that you actually had time and did do the things that you said that you would do to try to fix them. So guess what? You do it all very well, and I will give you a bonus, right? I will turn your SWOT analysis into a bonus multiplier. So let's say you had 40 out of 50, right? If I multiply it by 125%, guess what? That 40 score turns into a perfect 50 because you did what you did during the assessment and you did an excellent analysis of what you did. Then we restore some more points to you. You just do the bare minimum and hand it in. Okay. Good. Yeah, as I remember one person saying, I'll give you a C, and C means it's correct, but it's not excellent, right? An excellent gets an A, above average gets to B. The average is what the C is for. So if you gave me a mundane, uninspired review of your work, maybe it's incomplete, or at least it certainly doesn't have the summary at the end, right? This whole chunk up here is missing. Okay, well, at best, I can give you all the points that you earned, but if you're not careful, I can start to take away some of them. And here's where you have to be careful. I don't have time to do a SWOT analysis. I'm just going to not do them. You just converted all of the points you earned into zeros. Okay? Do not forget to do a SWOT analysis. At least do a lazy bare minimum where you kind of started it and you identified a few things. Because you'll get 80% of your score if you do that. You'll get 100% of your score if you give me 20 items, but you didn't give me the final patterns and plan to improve. Come on, it's not that much work. Just push a little extra further, build the extra paragraph at the end, and get 125%. Do not slave for hours and hours over this. You do not need to transcribe the entire segments, all of the segments. You only need to transcribe enough that you pull out of it 20 examples. And you can have a lot of successes in those examples. If you only identify the things you did well, that's not really the goal here. The goal is that you're finding things to work on getting better. But at the same time, not to only find things that you did wrong so that you think that the majority of what you did was wrong. So along the way, you had a segment, it's got 2 problems in it, but there's 3 things I did well. There's probably 24 things you did well, but let's not go overboard. Yes, I generated that sign correctly, I generated that sign correctly, I generated that sign correctly. Okay, come on. Okay, you generated the signs correctly. That's one item. You know, I spelled this term correctly. Okay, I'll give you that you generated the signs correctly and you fingerspelled something correctly. Those are 2 different kinds of things. You can give me 2 things for that sample. What else do you have? Good word order choice. Why was it a good word order choice? Explain why. And then grab that one. There's 3 things done in that example. However, I forgot this piece. Okay, great. There's a 4th thing, and you got 3 strengths and what would have been an opportunity now. Anything else in that segment that you can find? Maybe you can find a 5th thing. Great. Can you find 5 things in each segment you transcribe? Then transcribe 4 little pieces. They don't have to be consecutive, but it doesn't hurt if they're consecutive, right? Let's do this part. Then we do the next part, the next part, one more part. And can you find 20 things in those 2 minutes or those 4 minutes? It doesn't have to take all day. You don't have to spend a weekend doing the SWOT analysis. You can knock a SWOT analysis out in about an hour and a half. I want you to look at your work. You don't have to look at all of it, but you need to look intensively at a good part of it. That's the SWOT analysis. That's the point of doing it. That's how you get better. You're the only one who can make you get better. We can point out things, but if you don't incorporate the feedback into your future work, then you're not getting better. You just know that you could be. Prove to yourself that you can get better. Incorporate the things that you find. Use this after you graduate so that you can move towards certification quickly and that you can help other people too. Talk about your work with other people. This is a great way to think about how do I talk about it. See you later.